Right. And that's that much. Thank you.
You see Travis got a few of them. Are you on Facebook?
With who?
Travis.
Yeah. Andrea?
Figure out why I couldn't see far. It's because I have my readers on.
I forgot my pen. I
Oh,
forgot my reading
so
glasses.
blurry
Oh,
out there.
no,
Yeah.
that's not good. I'm blind if I don't
Well.
have my glasses.
Well, all this computer was.
Do it from muscle
That's
memory.
perfect.
Good evening, everybody. We'll call this meeting of the Delta Township Board to order. With board members and guests, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Trustee Bowen.
Present.
Trustee Brewer.
Present.
Trustee Cascarella.
Present.
Trustee Monica.
Here.
Treasurer Pidwa.
Here.
Clerk Clark is present. Supervisor Fletcher.
Here.
You have quorum.
Thank you very much. We have the agenda before us. Any additions or deletions? Motion to approve.
So
Fonda. Moved by Fonda, seconded by Andrea, that we approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. We have a variety of communications in our packet. I think the main one is to take a look at the wastewater treatment plant project status update. And if you have any questions, direct them to Brian. Public comments now. Anybody in the audience would like to speak this evening on any of the topics on our agenda or any other issue? Now's your opportunity to do so. Anybody here this evening to speak? Oh, I see somebody coming forward. Just state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name's Chris Keck, 5405 South Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. I am the president of the Greater Lansing Building Trades Council. I am here tonight to speak in favor, as I was during the public hearing, of the TIF that's in front of you this evening for the Delta Crossings. I'm also here to speak in favor of the Delta Crossings project as a whole. The building trades likes to see local workers on projects like this one, so the workers can spend their hard-earned dollars in the communities which they live. I want to thank the board for all of their work and everyone who had anything to do with this project. We, as the building trades, know a lot goes into these projects. And I want to thank you for letting me speak tonight, and happy holidays to the board and everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate you being here. Anybody else in the audience this evening would like to speak? Now's your opportunity. Seeing no one coming forward, we'll continue down with our agenda then. And next up is the consent agenda. What's the pleasure of the board this evening on the items on our consent agenda? Karen,
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
is there support? There is support. Madam Clerk, please call the roll on approving the consent.
Supported.
Andrea,
No,
Oh,
okay,
was it
it's
Beth? I'm
Beth.
sorry.
Yeah, it's Beth.
Trustee Monica,
Yes.
trustee Bowen,
Yes.
trustee Brewer,
Yes.
trustee Cascarella,
Yes.
treasurer Fedor,
Yes.
clerk Clark is yes, supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item up then is the items of business, and we have one item. We have the final approval of proposed Delta Township Saginaw Corridor Improvement Authority Development and the tax increment finance plan, and the Delta Township Corridor Improvement Authority has recommended adoption of this. So with that, I will open it up to the board. Andrea?
Yeah, so, one, just wanted to make some comments. I know we have, received a lot of feedback and have been given updates as a Corridor Improvement Authority Board has been working on the plan. And both their plan for development and the related TIF plan, and we've had public hearings. And great information that's been shared. And we understand, the Corridor Improvement Authority presents for our community and for Delta Township as a governmental entity, just another tool in the toolbox to help with development in our community and on this corridor, and especially on the east end of Saginaw, where it's the older part of our community. So it allows us to capitalize on new investment and put that into other areas of the corridor that may not be seeing that same level of investment, really dedicate that to improving our community as a whole. And, that the east end of the corridor was where our community really started. It's grown and continues to grow. But I think we all as a board kind of, and not that I want to speak for everyone, but I think we all share a commitment to maintaining investment there and not just looking to new growth. And this gives us an opportunity to really target those efforts. And again, it's one more tool. I don't think any of us are disillusioned that it's a panacea and it changes everything, but it really helps us. And we're fortunate to be a community that's growing. And the growth we have now in this part of, in the commitments and the opportunity for further growth really just give us greater opportunity to support those older parts of our community that are integral. And for the residents that live there as well to see that reinvestment. So I am very excited about this opportunity and would like to make a motion to approve the Corridor Improvement Development Authority and tax increment financing plan.
Has been moved to support the resolution. Is there support?
Support.
It's been supported. Continuing discussion. I'd like to speak. Other discussion? Rhonda?
I will. And thank you, Andrea, for your comments. This has been probably the most challenging subject matter that I've dealt with as a newer board member. And a big one because it bears such a big price. And it's a commitment that goes years on down the road, way past my tenure as a board member, I'm sure. So it's.
Fonda, you can last another 20 years.
I'm gonna count on you for that, but I may be in sunny Florida after weather like this today in 20 years. But it's been a tough journey and all of you know, it's been a tough journey for me. And I've had some concerns and I mean, it just felt rushed at the beginning for me. I can only speak for me, but that doesn't mean that our administrative team and Suzanne and the CIA board, they put in time. They put in the time, they did the work. Was every one of my heart's desires answered? No, but that's just the world we live in. But the project itself is amazing. I love what it's done for this end of town. I love what it's going to do for the other side of town that's near and dear to my heart, because that's Delta to me. That's just me personally, is the east end of the corridor. So I think that this project, along with the wonderful minds here at this table and everybody on the CIA board and our administration and Suzanne with her leadership, I believe we can make this very successful. And so for the first time, I will be supporting it. And what I look forward to doing is working with the committees and the boards on the development agreement. Because I think that's where we can make sure, I need to be able to assure the township that I'm protecting their dollars. And I think my better work can be done and served in that capacity. And, but I'm confident that we can get through it. So I will be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Yolanda, any other comments this evening?
I do. Supervisor
Beth?
Fisher. When we brought this up for a vote to go to the public hearing, it was stated in that meeting that we would have the opportunity to possibly alter the plan before the final vote. And I have a few alterations that I would like to offer for consideration of the board. So I wrote something up here, so I'm going to be reading from it, but it was previously written. As Trustee Castarella stated, a corridor improvement authority is an economic development tool created by state statute to empower local municipalities to make strategic investments in their jurisdiction for the betterment and quality of life within the municipality. And that's what we plan to do with it. And I believe that this TIF and development plan should be driven by what the township determines is an adequate amount of money diverted from other township revenue funds and into economic development, which is what the TIF is. Once the end amount is determined, then the duration and pass-through percentage could be determined. In the development plan, I moved to strike all the language in the development plan on page 12, if you want to look at it, that speaks about private development projects, because I believe that the project categories on page 11 should be sufficient for this blueprint plan. Our consultant has said multiple times, this is a blueprint, it's a framework. And page 11 has the project categories that we talked about during our strategic plan and that we talked about during our work session, all of these categories. And I believe those should be sufficient for guiding the CIA board in the future of the projects that they want to plan. I also want to talk a question about why we need $36 million over the next 20 years for economic development, or could we specify a smaller amount, 10 million over the next 10 years? This project list had suggested amounts here, and it estimated we only needed $5.6 million for the types of projects. And I'm concerned that table 2 in the plan as it is presented is pushing the size of the TIF. So table 2 lists the costs that have already been incurred for the infrastructure at Delta Crossings, plus it has projections for Brookside Crossings and for the Lansing Mall with the infrastructure issues that they have there. Because we have these large numbers, I feel that that is pushing the size of the TIF to the 36 million over the 20 years. And I also question the 20% pass-through. Why not 30%? Why not 50%? If we did 50% pass-through, then the township would see $18 million come into the general fund over the next 20 years, and $18 million go into the TIF. So those are the changes that I suggest, because I'm concerned that our municipality should not be investing in something that's dependent on market value of the property or the business. What if the property value decreases? What if the businesses go out of business? I'm concerned that we would have another situation like Lansing Township saw with Eastwood Town Center. It's a little different, but I still want to make sure that the taxpayer money is spent on things that are strategic and smart for the future of our township.
Is there support for her motion for amendments?
I'll support.
There is the support. Suzanne, would you like to address some of the things that were raised, like why is it 36 million, all that other stuff?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. The projects listed on page 12, and it relates to the table 2 you mentioned as well, on the cost of the projects and how it's determined. And we talked at length about this, both with the taxing jurisdictions and when we're looking at specifically with the county. What happens if only the first phase of Delta Crossings happens and you don't have all the future? To be able to have Delta Crossings expand and fully develop into the 200 million, 250 million project, it needs additional public infrastructure to be able to do that. So expansion of the road, which is the cost, the cost of the infrastructure for public infrastructure in public rights of way. And so they will be dedicating the street to the county. That facilitates the additional revenue creation that will happen as a result. So they're really hinged together, that the dollar amount is dependent on full development of the parcels to be able to realize the revenue that you would be getting back. The township does benefit, all the township residents benefit by having that additional infrastructure. Where it's been concerns, we had at the county Ways and Means Committee, there was a question about connectivity and being able to get around in more ways around Delta Township. The additional street from a north-south standpoint provides that additional connectivity. And again, it facilitates the development that you would otherwise not have. The taxing that's being done, the TIF collection is only on those two parcels. There's no other TIF collection happening in the rest of the corridor. And there's different thoughts on whether or not then the developers putting the resources in to develop the public infrastructure, whether they should be reimbursed for that. And that was kind of the underpinning of understanding the cost of the infrastructure to be able to facilitate the development, to be able to not only capture it for the benefit of the entire corridor, but in the future, when the TIF comes off, the larger gains that the township has by the increased benefit of having a fully developed parcel. So you have a bigger return even after the TIF, when that TIF comes off. And so being able to do that was really the thinking through it. If you only were focused on just the township projects and not the rest of it, we would have to look at whether or not just what's there today would capitalize the township projects. It certainly would not capture and help with leveraging Lansing Mall site, because we did include in that project list on page 12, where we listed both Delta Crossings and Brookside Crossings. We also listed the Lansing Mall, and wanting to be able to provide some infrastructure supports to facilitate the redevelopment of that area. So it's not just the 6 million, it's more like 10 million if we look at that. And then the other costs associated with the lifespan of the Corridor Improvement Authority. So you could modify and just list private projects if you wanted and just refer to them, but really encouraging the development of that public infrastructure, this is narrowly defined, which is really unusual for a Corridor Improvement Authority or TIF district like this to so narrowly define it as we have, only for the infrastructure. That the concern would be without that, you're not going to get the full benefit of the CIA and the return that could potentially bring in other resources into the rest of the corridor.
But we have to wait the 20 years until the TIF is completed to realize those additional dollars coming in to be spread, as Trustee Cascarilla said, down to the east side of the corridor.
You'll be able to realize the benefits. You won't have to wait 20 years to be able to put money into the east side. You'll be receiving funds on, as soon as starting next year to be able to put into the Corridor Improvement Authority and to start planning for the entire corridor. So the planning piece is the first piece, to be able to know what capital improvements you want to make and what the partnership with MDOT would be. For example, if you're going to improve Saginaw Highway, you have to have that committed funding source to be able to make those commitments to MDOT as a partner to be able to develop that. So, and with MDOT's funding cycles, it's almost on a 5-year cycle. That commitment and the length of time of the 20 years is really appropriate to be able to do the entire length of the corridor, being as long as it is. If you're focused on 10 years, you might be able to get 1 or 2 miles done versus the entire corridor. So the length of time allows you to phase it as well, which I think is a benefit.
But I don't understand how we can divert money to MDOT for Saginaw Highway if all of the money is already specified. It's going to Delta Crossings, Brookside Crossings, and the Lansing Mall. Where is this money coming from that then could be put into the road?
There's also money contained in the spreadsheets that show the amounts that will be coming to Delta Township. To the authority board, actually, technically, it would be to the authority board. And then those resources are there, and they can commit to MDOT knowing that revenue source is available for their infrastructure improvements.
And what percentage of the whole is that?
I'd have to go back. I think it was about 35% of the total pot of money. And the tables I have are tiny. So you mean the overall percentage of all their monies collected?
No, I know that if we set up the TIF, 20% goes pass through to the taxing jurisdictions. And then we have all these other earmarks for the 3 different properties, the 3 million set aside for the Lansing Mall and that sort of thing. But now you're saying there's another chunk of money that's going to the authority that's different from what we're seeing on that.
No, that's the table to the projects list that you identified.
Mhm.
That's the money. And those are the projects that are in there. We'd anticipated improvements with MDOT on Saginaw Highway in the township's list of projects
Okay.
in table 2.
Dennis.
Suzanne, maybe to put a little simpler term so I can understand it, is that because of this phased approach for the infrastructure, is that each one is determined individually, and it'll be so dictated in the development agreement. So it is already, it will be segmented anyway. So
Yes.
this is sort of like an umbrella statement. Is that a correct
That is
analogy in
correct.
a simple term?
Yep.
So it's sort of built in, as you said there. As it's not doing the whole thing, that's the ceiling, but as it's implemented, it's going to be segmented, phase 1, phase 2, 3, 4, 5, and however that works out.
Correct.
All right,
Yep.
thank you.
And you also, as you go along, I mean, two other things, I think. One is that 20-year timeline is what's been planned. Your experience with your brownfield, you realize the payoff much sooner. You hit that amount faster than what you had projected. That same scenario could happen here, and that timeline could be cut from 20 years to something less based on the tax dollars that are generated from those parcels.
Other comments? I just want to say, I don't support the amendment. I do want to, though, take a few minutes, though, to praise the work of the CIA board, because they really spent a lot of time debating these very issues. They spent a lot of time discussing, what should the pass-through be? How many years should we have this last? All those things. And they decided, as they wade through all these different pieces, they wanted to stick as close as to what was originally presented. When this project was originally presented, it was presented as a 20% pass-through for, the governmental entities so that they would still see revenue moving forward as it's developing and not, just wait till the final end of it. And 20%, quite frankly, has been discussed as far more than what any other, CIA has as far as a pass-through. Usually they just don't do that. But the CIA board, after discussing it, thought they really wanted to stick to what was originally presented when the project was thrown out there and people decided they wanted to go through with it. And the number of years and how long it takes is all based on, make the numbers work, and what you're trying to pay for. The project list, the CIA board just accepted the list that our board jointly with the CIA board came up with as far as the township project. So they just pretty much stuck with that. They did not try to modify that list at all. And I went with what, the developer originally said he needed 14 million roughly for the infrastructure. And, then the other things, like you said, interest and things like that, that kind of determined that it had to be 20 years to make the numbers work. So the CIA board really did put a lot of time, a lot of energy into looking at all these various points and coming up with a recommendation that they made. So I think that they did a good thing. So. Mary?
I too will not be voting for the amendment, but I do want to go on record saying I appreciate the clarity and the discussion that we have had for 12 months about this, and we have been engaged as a board every step of the way, and I appreciate having that opportunity to really analyze, discuss, and understand what we're doing. So thank you for that.
So if nobody else has anything, Beth?
I-
Go ahead.
I would just like to point out that the numbers that were put forth at the beginning of this project came directly from the Delta Crossings developer and his consultant. And I just wanted that on the record, that it was not generated by the township or our staff or our, it was not part of our planning, that these came to us from an outside source. Thank you.
Just on that point, though, Beth, the infrastructure cost to the Delta Crossings project, of course, would come from the developer because they have laid it out and they know what the infrastructure, it's the projects that are township projects that we added that came from us.
Oh, thanks, Ken. The CIA board, did pretty yeoman's work on discussing this issue. There's only a certain amount of meetings they had. About half of them was dealing with orientation, what's the CIA board, what are the powers, what are your roles? The others dealing with their articles of incorporation, if you will. And then very intense meeting to talking about the details of this. And frankly, I feel that the CIA board was really drinking through a fire hose. They were given all of this information in one presentation and then come back and let's discuss it and vote on that very next meeting with a 2-week interlude in between. And I attended them. So I heard what was said, and there was a lot of concern and a lot of answers to that concern was, well, this is just a framework, which is true, and that it can always be amended down the road, either by you or by the board as a whole. So that gave them some comfort to go forward on this. And given the timeline of the deadline of passing a TIF to capture phase 1 by the end of the calendar year, proceeded accordingly. And that statement was true. Yes, it can be amended. And I think that gave some of the CIA board members some comfort because we've had, like Mary said, we've had a year to review this stuff. It's taken a long time. I mean, you're talking 2 different things. You're talking about a development plan, you're talking about a TIF plan, all is thrown at you once. And then you're throwing in, well, look at the projects they can do. So there's some incentives there that you have to discern, as to part of the other stuff. So I feel it's taken me this long to fully understand all of the nuances of this. And if I was on the CIA board and I was given that a brief amount of time to try to absorb it all and make a truly informed decision, I don't feel I could have, to be honest with you. But nonetheless, they're here. They've done a good job is what they could do, and they will continue to do that. So I have confidence in them. So I just wanted to make that observation. I am satisfied with Suzanne's answer as to what the questions were and the concerns of Trustee Bowen. So with no offense, Trustee Bowen, I will not be supporting the amendment.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll on Trustee Bowen's amendment.
Trustee Bowen,
Yes.
Treasurer Fedewa,
No.
Trustee Brewer,
No.
Trustee Cascarella,
No.
Trustee Mojica,
No.
Clerk Clark is no, Supervisor Fletcher.
No.
Motion is defeated.
Okay, thank you. So we return to discussion of the original motion, which is to approve the resolution approving the CIA plan and the TIF plan. Dennis?
Thanks again. I have a question, sort of a legal question. On page 13 of the narrative, it's stated that Delta Crossings, Lansing Mall, and Brookside owners will be reimbursed. It's not permissive. It's more like will be reimbursed. So my question on that is, by including that language as an entitlement, Are we really then boxing ourselves in as a township if there's a future dispute and any owner and that we are not going to fulfill the entire reimbursement of either Delta Crossings or Berkside Crossings or the Lansing Mall? And would that owner have more arguable leverage in saying, hey, look, it's in your development plan, you voted on it, that you will reimburse? And does that present a legal dilemma for the township?
Hi, happy to speak to that. So I think everyone would agree that that is the intent, or that's where this is headed, right? But just to be clear, until and unless a development agreement, the next step is actually entered into and negotiated, they have absolutely zero sort of contractual claim, if you will, that they're entitled to reimbursement.
But my point is, if it ends up in a court dispute, and they can point to this as being that's the intent of the township that they will reimburse. I mean, shouldn't we make that more permissive?
I think if you read the plan as a whole, it's very clear that this is just a plan, and in the law, this is just a plan. And again, it truly is just a framework. So I can't in 100 years imagine them relying exclusively on a development plan as some sort of contractual obligation in and of itself.
So that would take precedent over any sort of framework document that this is what you're saying.
I'm sorry, which would take
That
precedent?
the development agreement would actually be the deciding factor, and this would be just sort of a framework. And it really wouldn't add to any legal argumentation that, the township is falling short on its.
That's absolutely right. Yep.
Okay.
So the development and reimbursement agreement itself is actually the contract.
Right. I
Yeah,
understand.
and as you've mentioned a few times, and we've discussed, that's where the teeth are actually. So,
Right.
and actually, if you look at page 12 of the plan, there's sort of a nice summary of this very principle where it says, all tax increment revenue reimbursements authorized under this plan shall be governed by a development and reimbursement agreement.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
So it
that-
delegates that decisive authority to the agreement is from a legal point of view, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. That is a contract.
Right.
This is a plan, and it's very well established in the law that these types of TIF and development plans are just that, they're plans.
Right.
So,
And while you're up there, I have
Yeah.
one more legal question.
okay.
I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to be clear is that, so we're going through the process of the build out of the different phases. And one of the businesses or the leasees, whichever, the owner of a business, because some of them are being owned outright, some are in condos, some are being leasees. But if they go into, if they vacated the business, if they go into foreclosure or declare bankruptcy, where does that put the township as far as like reimbursing for the infrastructure?
So you're talking about the tenants within this development?
Tenants and or owners, because some
Okay.
are going to actually be owners.
Okay, so of the businesses within
Yeah.
the development.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think how that would eventually reach the township. Of course, that might arguably affect the value of the property. And that would probably arise in the context of some sort of evaluation procedure. So in other words, and I think your assessor is here tonight, but ultimately over time, if that were to happen enough, the value of the overall property could be reduced, I suppose, if it's some sort of a tax appeal or something based on, using the income approach for valuation. And so therefore, just like in any business setting, anywhere, that is a possibility.
I
What you're
understand
talking
that,
about.
but
Okay.
if someone is in foreclosure and they're not paying their taxes, they got about 3 years, to make good. Otherwise, they can lose it through a tax sale. Am I correct in that?
Yeah,
Okay, so, but those 3 years, these tax assessment payments that are due from the leaseor who's not paying them,
mhm.
because they're in arrears. But yet is the township still obligated to pay the developer for reimbursement when we're not getting the tax revenue because of any one of those three scenarios?
Okay, so I'm not privy to the contracts that will occur between the developer and his tenants. In some of those contracts, the tenants are responsible for paying taxes, and in some, the owner of the property is. So that's something that we don't know exactly how that would look.
So how can the township protect itself in those
The
scenarios?
town, so overdue taxes will always become a lien on the property. So just like in any situation where, and this is assuming that not only the tenant would fail to pay, but then the developer, the property owner, which is who you're going to be sending the tax bill to, presumably, is going to be liable to the township for those taxes. And that becomes a lien eventually on the property, just like in any property ownership
And I
situation.
understand that, but
Yeah.
I guess the root of my question is that, let's say this goes over a 3-year period. So are we still, we're not getting the revenue in full that we were supposed to get, and yet the reimbursement amount is staying the same. So are we then obligated with the reimbursement agreement, even though there's less revenue that comes in for that particular tenant and that particular reimbursement for that particular phase for that infrastructure?
So we can build these conditions and milestones and requirements into the development agreement. So it needs to produce a certain amount of value in order for them to be reimbursed. Is that what you're getting at?
Not value.
Okay.
I'm talking about revenue collected. I mean, value is a figure on a piece of paper. It's really, what are you actually collecting? If they go into foreclosure, I mean, what I'm trying to ask is this the sort of thing that can be addressed in the development agreement?
Yes.
Okay, that was the answer I was hoping for. Thank you.
Just wanted to say one thing. I wanted to, and I meant to do this earlier, no question for you, but thank you. I wanted to thank the developer for using local labor. That's big. That's really big to me. And I think it's big to everyone else. So I wasn't here for the public hearing. I have my mother is going through some personal health issues. So I wasn't able to be here, but I watched by Zoom the public comments and hearing. That hearing means a lot or meant a lot to me. So I wanted to thank the developer for using local labor, because that's the Delta way. And it's helping us all. And then Supervisor, I call for the question, if I may.
Okay, I think we're getting close to the end of the discussion. Are you sure you want to call the
No,
question?
I mean, if there's somebody who wants to talk, I would, I just didn't
I'd
know.
like to make another comment.
Oh, I don't want to cut you. I
Thanks.
retract that.
Thank you, Trustee Brewer.
You're welcome.
Andrea, you made good points. Beth has made good points. Fonda, you made good points, and other board members as well. There's been some frustration, I know, amongst some of us, but that's the way the process goes. I think that we've got as much information as we possibly can, and even forecasting out is really what benefits and how soon we'll be able to actually realize and utilize those benefits in the larger scheme of what we're trying to do. And we've all shared the vision of doing something to help revitalize the East Saginaw corridor, whatever that may be, whatever it may be. That's why I voted for the creation of the CIA with local businesses, because I don't think we can do this on our own. I don't feel that I can, in this board, being on here 9 years, that we would be able to do that without the assistance of local business partners in the community assigned to assessing that task. I'm also very confident that our special counsel will best protect, the interests of the township. That's why I asked these questions. And it is and does come down to the development agreement. There will be a lot of details that will have to be hashed out. So as Susanna said, this is a framework. It's what it is. I think it's a good framework. And I think this is the tool that we as a township, I think it's the only tool that we really have. And it does force this township to earmark and set aside revenues to actually do something. It actually forces us to do something because we are actually earmarking revenues that we're collecting for a specific purpose. And I think, that's the intent. And I think that's the honorable goal that we want to also see and succeed in. And that's why I'll be supporting the resolution.
Thank you. Mary.
I was gonna call the question.
Well, perfect.
Great minds think alike.
And again.
Well, I guess I'll just summarize here.
Steph has her hand up.
Well, I'm glad that we're at this point. It's been a long discussion over the past year and a half, but I think it's been no surprise that I have felt that this is a good project from the get-go, from the first time Chris sat down with me and walked you through what his vision was for the project. I felt that this was a fantastic thing for Delta Township. When you have somebody wanting to invest $200 million into our community, create hundreds and hundreds of good paying construction jobs, create long-term jobs in the stores and in the restaurants and in whatever else comes along into the development, to create new mixes of housing that we have been saying we've wanted for a while. And I've seen the drawings of the housing that Chris is going to design, and it's beautiful. It adds new things that we don't have. It has the single level thing, apartments like the Redwood, but also has has 2-story ones that would be more appealing, I think, to like millennials and others. The more traditional apartments, I think, is going to be very attractive and will be very popular as well. So I think it's a good mix, and it's a great project. And I think that there has already been, you see the excitement in the community in terms of asking and wondering what new stores are coming, what new restaurants are coming, when will they open? And when they hear what's coming, they get excited, and you see that excitement. So I've seen a lot of support and excitement out in the community. Developing that area has been a priority. Our EDC did a joint study with Paul Ide, the owner of the property, a couple of years ago, to look at what could be attracted to bring into our corridor, to bring into that property, what type of mixes of buildings and businesses would be successful there. So it's something that the township has focused on for a while. So to have Chris come along was fantastic, and it's been a wonderful, wonderful project. And I know over the course of the year and a half, there's been comparisons and stuff made to Eastwood Town Center. But what's being discussed here is vastly different than the problems that Eastwood ran into. And Eastwood Town Center was totally different. Lansing Township became the developer. They took on debt, they built buildings, and then when the rents did not come in and when the parking revenue did not come in, they were unable to pay back those loans. That's what happened there. That's not what we're doing here. The township is not becoming the developer. We're not going into debt. We're not investing our taxpayers' money into the project.
Point of
It's
order,
not
Mr.
all.
Supervisor. Robert's rule states that the chair of the meeting is not supposed to discuss the motions under consideration by the board, and I can point that out in the book if you would like me to do so.
The Michigan Township Association will tell you that all members of this board are equal members who have a chance to speak and to address on every issue that's before this. And I'm just speaking in support of it, as I have a right to do. And I will continue. Thank you.
Okay.
But this has been a good project. The concerns and the comparisons to Eastwood is not something that any resident of our township needs to worry about, because it just is not a factor. It is not an issue. It's something that I think that we're going to see great benefits, and already we're seeing those benefits as they come through. And it's going to be exciting to see it as by doing a partnership. It's going to be great to see it happen quickly and not wait and have it spread out a long period of time, see that housing come in and see the rest of the development that's expected. So I'm pleased that we're here, pleased that this day has come. I'm excited to be able to support this project moving forward. So, Madam Clerk, you want to call the roll?
Trustee Cascarella,
Yes.
trustee Mohica,
Yes.
trustee Bowen,
No.
trustee Brewer,
Yes.
clerk is yes, treasurer Fedewa.
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and thank you, everybody who's been part of this project, especially Suzanne and Jessica. We certainly appreciate all the work, definitely the work that's been put in by Brian and staff and everybody else that's been involved with this project. It's certainly, I know a lot of time has gone into it from the staff perspective over the past year and a half. So we certainly appreciate all those hours and all that time. And of course, we appreciate the work of the CIA board. And thank you, Chris, for putting your faith in Delta Township and investing $200 million into our community. We'll continue on with the agenda. Now go to the manager's report. Brian, what do you have for us?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor and board members. Just start out with a sad note. Most of you know Mike Roberts. He's received another opportunity in the private sector, so he'll be leaving the township. December 10th is his last day, so quite a loss for us in the fire department. But if you have a chance to wish him well, and under COVID, you can't do a lot, but we'll have a small open house December 10th for him. Along the same lines, I know it was in the consent agenda, but appreciate the board support of the 2 fire apparatus. I know one of them was a helpful earmark that Representative Whitwer was very instrumental in getting us, but I know speaking for the firefighters are very appreciative of being able to add on the new heavy duty pumper and looking ahead, and they're really running pretty ragged right now with a lot of the calls and just the promise of good and new equipment, which Delta's always been known for, but they really appreciate it, and I know a lot of them wanted to pass that along. We had the communication on the wastewater treatment plant, just a couple of we're kind of the rubber is really hitting the road here for milestones. So at the November 22nd Planning Commission, they approved the site plan contingent on any of the requirements from the road commission or drain office. So we're in contact with them. We're still waiting their review comments, but should get that back and have full site plan approval on that. On December 10th, we will be publishing environmental assessment for public review for the project. So that's something that just comes as a requirement for the financing, and we'll be receiving comments from Eagle on the 90% plans and submission. So by Christmas time, or the 23rd of December, we'll be submitting 100% plans and specifications to Eagle. Also presenting plans to our building department for their plan review as well. Just looking out ahead, the tentative bidding schedule for phase 1 will be advertising January 10th. Plans will be made available on the 17th, pre-bid meeting on the 26th, bids being due February 24th. And we'll bring it back to the board for consideration March 7th. So I'm happy to send you these dates. I know several of you have asked me roughly about those dates. So I'll be happy to send those to you. So I know that we get a lot of questions. It's a big project. A couple things, we are making some preparations on site. So if you get any calls, we are removing some trees in some areas that's a timeline thing. And also preparations for a temporary chemical feed system that we'll need in the transition and clearing out some of the buildings and area that'll be demolished. So that's a lot going on with the wastewater treatment plant, and that will continue to ramp up. So it's been asked in previous board meetings if we're looking for some grant funding. So a lot of the federal money through the state has not really been allocated yet. There's a couple bills out there, Senate Bill 565 and House Bill 5522. Some of that has water and sewer in it. Some of it has public safety type stuff. I know there's a big economic development bill. So some of these things we're still waiting to drop to see if any of these things are helpful with our infrastructure. Of course, the federal infrastructure bill, a lot of it's geared towards water and lead pipe removal. So I'm hoping that there'll be some consideration put into the wastewater side as well, because right now that's one of our major needs. Many of you have mentioned or probably seen the Santa box outside, so people are excited about that. We had 30 letters in there the other morning. So people are finding that. And then one last kind of a fun story. The Great Lakes Christian College, their women's soccer team won the National Christian College Athletic Association Division II championship. So kind of a neat thing. Any national championship is pretty big. So if you, guess next time you run into Phil Beavers or anybody from GLCC, give them the congratulations. So, but that's all I have, Mr. Supervisor. Happy to take any questions.
Sure, Andrea has some questions. That's fine.
Yeah, and Brian, you did bring up the bills. I was just gonna say, I assumed you probably were getting reports from the Michigan Municipal League and the Michigan Townships Association, but I think there's high anticipation that those will be passed. And I was specifically, as you were talking about, our investments in critical firefighter apparatuses that we very much need to support the our staff and their work and their efforts. In that public safety supplemental includes significant incentives, especially for firefighters, EMTs, and bonuses, things of that nature to help with attention and attraction. So I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that and the water supplemental that is out there as well. You mentioned the bill, so you are not surprised at all by that, but just thought I'd make sure. But it does sound like by next week, we should get some clarity on all that, so.
Yeah.
Thanks, Wanda.
Yeah, there's House Bill number 5351. And it's under the tax policy committee. And that's where they're looking at maybe amending the personal property tax for businesses. Right now it's if you have personal property under 80,000, you can sign the waiver and you're good forever. But there's some amendments with that they might change that figure, that amount on an annual basis. So I didn't know if you're following that or if that's a bill that you can follow to see where that goes on down the road, but it's House Bill 5351.
Okay.
And I think
Yep.
they met this week, or they'll be meeting this week. There's a meeting this week. I haven't followed it closely,
There's a hearing.
but yeah, that's what I thought. So I just didn't know if you were keeping up with that, because I know we deal with that through our assessor's office as well.
Yes, that what we did, I did get an update on that, on the municipal finance committee I'm on, which I believe the MML is opposing that bill.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, so,
Good. And then the last thing is, congratulations to the Christian College. And if there's something we can do as a board to recognize them, I would love to see us do that, because that's big. And I was so proud when I saw that on TV.
sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Brian? No. Great, thank you, Brian. We don't have anything in a committee of the whole tonight, so we'll take a final public comment. We do have a closed session this evening, but I wanted to, before we go into closed session, take any final public comment. So anybody from the public would like to say anything before we go into the closed session for the remainder of the meeting? None. Does anybody on the board wish to say anything before we go into the closed session? Okay, a motion to go into.
Sorry for late. I just wondered if there was any interest in the board talking about a resolution, and I think the city of Lansing passed a resolution pertaining to the decline the sign effort, for the ballot, the
Secure my
initiative.
vote.
Pardon?
Secure my vote.
Secure my vote, yeah, and I don't know if there's interest in any board members in doing something likewise. I've looked at our clerks, yeah.
Well, I've spoken and done interviews all over the state of Michigan and have talking points for it. We are, as MAMC is opposing the bill and are asking people to not sign. And there have been a couple cities that have taken positions. Most clerks have not brought it forward.
I'm just wondering if there's interest in the board doing something likewise.
I would be interested.
It'd be nice if we did. I have.
I'm in
verbiage
support of
to
that.
Bring it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we have Mary grab it together and Brian and her can, take it and put something into, something for Delta. We can take a look at it at our next meeting.
Sounds good.
Anything else?
Thank you, Dennis.
Okay, motion to go into executive session.
I so moved.
Before.
Been moved and supported to go to executive session to discuss or to go into closed session under Open Meetings Act to discuss items that are covered by the Open Meetings Act. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Fedorowicz,
Yes.
Treasurer Brewer, excuse me, Trustee Brewer.
I've been
Promoted
upgraded.
to. Trustee Bowen,
Yes.
Trustee Cascarella,
Yes.
Trustee Mohica,
Yes.
Clerk Clark is yes, Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
Carries.
Thank you. Are we still moving over to the next room, Brian, for closed sessions?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll adjourn to the next room.
Take your things or- Alana, you'll be here to watch our millions that we don't have. Okay.
I want to drink water.
Well, let me know. I'm actually staying in Lansing tonight.
Thank you for handling.
All right.
Did you miss us? Always some slow walkers across that.
Right,
hallway.
it's just across the hall.
Since we're all here, I'll call the regular meeting back to order here now. I would make a motion that we hold a regular township board meeting on December 13th at 6 p.m. Is there a second for that?
Support.
There is the support. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Anybody have anything final? Seeing no further business before us, we are adjourned.